Rodney, I hope all is well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Going great, Ryan. How are you?
Rodney, I had about 3 questions. I wish I'd have had you on like 5 minutes ago. One of the callers called in, and he had like 3 questions, recruiting questions. So I'm gonna pass them on to you. Brian Baker,
Okay.
defensive lineman, a coach out of Mississippi State. What do you think he's going to bring to Alabama?
Just as a coach?
Yeah. I mean, and also
a lot of experience. Yeah. A lot of experience, Ryan. When you're talking about, I think he's 16 or 19-year veteran in the NFL. Talked to some people that follow the Cowboys quite closely, and they talked about what a great job he did there, developing some of their players into all-pro types. And he did a fantastic job, obviously, at Mississippi State the last 3 years. Had some good players, but he certainly developed them and got the most out of them. Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat. And so I just think when you look at what he's done with the players that he's had, he's proven. I think he'll do a great job. And I think number one is his reputation and the things that he did at Mississippi State, he's done in the NFL will certainly help him as a recruiter here. And, just the fact that he's at Alabama certainly helps as well.
Rodney, there's also a lot of talk, and I believe you say it, Sopsher, is that the way you say it, the defensive lineman at Louisiana?
Sopsher.
Okay, yeah, I guess I butchered all that. Yeah.
Just call him Ishmael.
Yeah, there you go. Rodney, is there a chance that he ends up here in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, there's a definite chance. Matter of fact, I thought he was a pretty strong lean to Alabama for a while. And then I think LSU's kind of really closed the gap lately. He's from Amite, Louisiana. I think that's the way they pronounce it, maybe Amite. But he's down there in Louisiana, and certainly a guy that is at the same high school, from the same high school as Devontae Smith. Alabama has a lot of strong connections at that school, or some. And I think there's a great chance that he could end up here. But now he does visit LSU this weekend, and that'll probably go a long way in determining where he ultimately ends up next Wednesday. But I'll just put it to you this way, Ryan, as we're speaking right now, would not surprise me if he ended up at either one of the schools. So I couldn't really say for sure.
Is there anybody else on that defensive line that Alabama could add? And do you feel like that their final few spots, I mean, could they go defensive line here? I mean, or obviously he's a priority, but there's some other options as well.
Yeah, definitely. Byron Young out of Mississippi is committed to Alabama. He did not sign early. He's a great player, tremendous player. Reminds me a little of Dalvin Tomlinson.
Oh, wow, sure.
Just a really strong player. I think he sticks with Alabama. Now, he is going to visit LSU this weekend. The Mississippi schools have pushed on him pretty hard as well, but I think he'll stick with Alabama. So that would be one, and then I think they'll probably add another one, whether it's Sopsher or possibly if Nathan Pickering comes into town this weekend on the visit, as he's supposed to do, expected to do. He is from Seminary, Mississippi. He is committed to Mississippi State. He is a outstanding defensive lineman. That would be a major coup if they could somehow get him away from Mississippi State, in my opinion. Now, again, he's supposed to come in this weekend. A couple others that are coming in this weekend on visits, 4-star guys. Quashawn Fuller, who is committed to Mississippi State. He's out of the state of Florida, a really good player, and also another good defensive lineman, 4-star player, Jaquez Sorrells, who's got it down between Alabama, Penn State, and South Carolina, and he comes in this weekend as well. So I won't be surprised if Alabama gets Young, holds on to Young, and then adds one of those other guys.
Rodney, this early signing period has worked out for Nick Saban. It is, I mean, as much as Nick Saban was an opponent of this, it's worked out in his favor.
Yeah, this time it certainly did. Wow, it just makes you wonder what might have happened had they signed early.
Yeah, great point.
You never know with all the coaching changes that happened. I think that it could have probably created some chaos because let me just say this. First of all, obviously recruiting is much more competitive now because of the guys like Kirby Smart at Georgia, Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. You look over to Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, Dabo Swinney, of course, you recruit against him some, Dan Mullins now at Florida. So it's becoming more and more competitive, Ryan, and I do think that Alabama is not only from the competition from those guys, but also having to probably, what's the best way, fend off maybe some things that are said. I think that's probably becoming something that Alabama has to do more often.
Really? Negative recruiting even amping up from even years past? Are they taking it to another level?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think to some extent, to what extent, I'm not really sure, but I think that Nick Saban has to face the question of how much longer are you going to be there at Alabama? Or, some people certainly think that because of the loss to Clemson, Alabama's kind of on the way down now, that type of thing. You go to Alabama, they've got a lot of players at your position that, just you've got a greater opportunity to play here, those types of things. And I think that some of that you would probably face all the time, but it's probably ramped up a little bit more. I just think because maybe the Sharks smell the blood in the water after the Clemson game a little bit.
Well, and Rodney, to me, if you're Nick Saban, I flip out a piece of paper and I say, this quarterback here, this quarterback here. Is there any doubt I won't play the best entire guy? I mean, there's an example. If you come in and win the job and you're the best player, I'm willing to take a starting quarterback that's won a lot of games. I'll put him on the bench and I'll start this guy. To me, there's no better example for Nick Saban. If you're trying to lay out the case that he'll play the very best player, it's the quarterback competition that we just went through. I'll play this guy if he's the best guy. Certainly Tua was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, they have a lot to, obviously, track record that proves quite a bit.
Sure.
I mean, we could talk about that. We could talk about success in terms of developing the players, winning championships, all of the NFL draft picks that they've had, just so many different things. The graduation, the academic side of it's been good. So I think, obviously, they've still continued to sell Alabama. And those who said that maybe Nick Saban was getting away from the recruiting model in terms of his coaching staff, that to me, that's totally wrong. I mean, I think some of the guys they're bringing in are better coaches than some that have left on the field. Certainly, I would probably agree with that. But I also think that these guys are excellent recruiters. You talk about Charles Huff, the running backs coach. And again, I know none of these are official, but we've seen their Twitter handles change. And I think a guy like Sal Sinceri, how undersold is he as a recruiter? Vastly, in my opinion. Charles Kelly. These guys are all successful, have done a great job in terms of recruiting as well.
Rodney, there's never too early to talk Alabama Crimson Tide football. We'll be getting into spring practice notes and things once we get through February the 6th coming up next week when we get National Signing Day and what Alabama's able to do there. But then we will begin immediately turning our attention to preview. Let me ask you, on certainly there's a lot of positives around this team. You got a quarterback, an All-American quarterback returning. You got all the skill position guys, a lot of the skill positions. Sure, you need to find the backs that can be every down backs that can fill Josh Jacobs. And I was reflecting on the story of Josh Jacobs a couple of minutes ago because I don't want to give you too much credit, but I think you were part of that conversation that kind of hinted a couple of guys. You might want to go take a look at the Josh Jacobs. I'm always inspired by the story. Every time I mention the guy's name, it's just a smile go across my face. And am I wrong? You had a small part of that, right? That you
yeah.
That you identified this guy and said, hey, you might want to go take a look at Tulsa, Oklahoma. This guy's pretty special.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was someone out there who, informed a few of us in this area of Josh Jacobs when he was in high school. I remember initially the question was, do you think Alabama would be interested in this guy, and how can we get in touch with the coaching staff? This was from the people out there kind of representing Josh. And, we can't really do that, but in terms of helping them, do that, but they have to do it on their own. But they did get in touch with Coach Burns on Twitter, and he got to see the film and was very impressed. And next thing you knew, they offered him a scholarship. And this is 3 weeks before signing day. Nobody really in this part of the country, and probably not many people in the Tulsa part of the country either, or Oklahoma or Midwest, I don't think very many people had heard too much about him there either. And he just kind of blew up very quickly. And, he was a guy who was a high school quarterback his senior year, ran that zone read for about 2,700 yards. Ryan, I think he averaged 19 yards a carry.
Wow.
Think about that. Yeah. So the question is, how do you replace that guy? That'll be something in the spring that people will be talking about. I mean, obviously they could have a little bit different look with Najee Harris and Brian Robinson, but I think it's going to be important to watch Jerome Ford, the young freshman. I assume he got a red shirt. I think he only played in 4 games, so he'd be eligible for it. But he's got a lot of that versatility, can catch the ball really, really well, speed, all of those types of things. They've got Trey Sanders who'll come in. And if Keelan Robinson signs with Alabama next week, he's committed. He's kind of a versatile back who can do a lot of different things. So they're going to have to find a way to kind of offset the loss of Josh Jacobs for sure.
Well, and where I was going, it just every time I mention Josh Jacobs, I think about in the exposure that maybe you helped him kind of reveal when you talk about Josh Jacobs. Let me ask you on the offensive line, because I'm still one of those guys. I always go back to the trenches. You can have Joe Montana back there, but if you don't have the big nasties up front that can get the job done, your quarterback's going to be running for his life. They replaced going into that last game, and I know Lester Cotton, Deontay Brown. You could debate which guy was the starter. Lester Cotton started quite a bit. Deontay Brown certainly did, but you lose your center, left guard, and your left tackle from that national championship depth chart. That's a little bit, not of a rebuilding process, but you got to find some pieces that'll fit in pretty quickly there at the O-line.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. They have some possibilities, even including some true freshmen that are coming in. They already be here. Darian Dalcourt. I think he's a guy that you could look at inside as a guard or center. Pierce Quick was already here, went through the bowl practices. He's a guy that you could probably look at as center as well, but for sure guard. That's among the young players. Emil Ekiyor is a redshirted freshman who I think has a lot of potential as a guard, could get a look at center this spring. Chris Owens has been around a while. I think he'll be a redshirt junior this year. He's worked a lot at center. He's played some at center in games. He's played guard. He's even played tackle. So he'll certainly get a look. Evan Neal is a true freshman coming in that's going to be fantastic. I mean, it's a matter of him getting in the kind of shape that he needs to be in, and he's working hard at that, I know. He's lost a lot of weight since last year. He could play tackle, left tackle. He may be a guy that gets a strong look like Cam Robinson did when he got here as a true freshman in the spring. Won't be surprised, though, Ryan, if they flip Alex Leatherwood from right guard over to left tackle and then try to fill in that right guard spot, maybe with Matt Womack, the former starter at right tackle. Might give him a look there. So basically, I know it sounds kind of throwing out a lot of names, kind of confusing, but I think you'll see that in spring where a lot of guys get looks at different spots to try to find that best combination.
TiderInsider.com. Rodney, I'm going to throw it back to you. Talk about the website as we count down the hours until the official National Signing Day. Alabama, the keys of trying to maybe get a couple of more pieces and hold on to what they've got as they've got the number one class, according to some. Talk about TiderInsider.com and how people can connect with all the information that you provide.
Yeah, Ryan, TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check, and that gives you access to all our premium information, as well as the forum where there's a ton of discussion, a lot of basketball talk right now as well. So, it'll go all the way up until signing day, a lot of discussion, Ryan, but then, like you said, middle of March, we're already looking at spring practice.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, we're they've moved up. They've moved up a day to April. What was it? The 13th, 12th, 13th.
I think it is.
Yeah. So that means we're gonna. I mean, at some point, I don't know exactly when Nick Saban's going to start that, but that's about a week earlier than that game has been in the past. I mean, normally it's about the 20th, 21st, somewhere around there. So if they're bumping it up to the 13th, they're going to have to get 15 days of Saban ball in pretty quick, and that'll be starting before we know it.
It really will. It really will. And it will be interesting to see how some of these new coaches operate, and the defense, how they start piecing that back together.
Yeah, and I think you said it last week. I think when we walk in that building, whenever that day, that first day, is you'll look at Sal Sunseri. He'll bring the energy, my friend. It's always good to hear his voice.
You'll hear him before you see him, Ryan. I promise you.
No doubt. No doubt. Rodney, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Okay, Ryan. Appreciate it. Take care.